Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the channel. We are back again with the tips this week. We're going to be heading into round 18. We are nearing the end of the season. It's kind of crazy to think about. There's only, I believe, 6 or 7 more rounds of the season to go. It feels like it's gone by very fast, although that's pretty much always the case. You know the drill by now, so we'll first of all go through my round 17 tips. I only got 4 out of 9, it was a pretty bad start, got the first 3 games wrong, tipped Geelong correctly, tipped the Dockers over Richmond, pretty easy tip that one, same with Melbourne, and then I also got Brisbane right, so there was quite a few upsets that I didn't see coming. The biggest of those was probably St Kilda beating Sydney, did not see it coming. GWS, I just didn't think they were in good enough form, but they looked impressive against Carlton, especially in the second and third quarter. And I also, you can never tip the Dogs really. And the Suns, I thought they just had to get their first away win, but they just can't seem to do it. And who knows when they're going to get their next away win. Oh, and also I didn't tip Collingwood. But now let's move on to round 18. So kicking things off with Friday night footy, Collingwood versus Geelong at the MCG. Should be a cracking game. On AFL tipping, this is a genuine 50-50. It might change by the time this video is out, but as of recording it right now, 50% of people have tipped Collingwood and 50% of people have tipped Geelong. So yeah, it's going to be a cracking match. Collingwood, they've lost their last couple. They're looking a bit shaky. They still have a fair few players on that injury list of theirs. And Geelong, in their last 2 weeks, they look like they've gotten back into some of their best form. They pretty comprehensively beat Essendon, and then they smashed Hawthorn, 2 teams that were in form. So they're looking the goods right now, Geelong, and I think I would have to back them in this one. With how many injuries Collingwood have right now, I just can't see them getting the job done over Geelong, but it is at the MCG. They'll have their home crowd behind them, so they're always a chance. But I think that Geelong, they're humming nicely right now, and this is probably a good time to get back into some form going into the last few rounds of the season, and watch out for them in finals, I say. Another extremely tough one to tip, Hawthorn versus Fremantle. This one is in Tasmania. The last time these two teams met at Tasmania, Fremantle beat them pretty comprehensively, although that was back in 2021, I believe. So a lot has changed since then. Hawthorn are a lot better, and so are the Dockers. So I don't think that you can really take anything out of that last matchup. The Hawks faltered last week after they were in some red hot form for about 8 or 9 rounds, and Fremantle, they are clicking into gear. They beat Sydney and they comfortably beat Richmond, and they're sitting 3rd on the ladder. It doesn't really feel like they are a 3rd place team, but the ladder doesn't lie. So yeah, they're in some very good form, and even though this one's at Tasmania, in Tasmania I should say, and Hawthorn do play very well there. They beat teams in Tasmania that they probably wouldn't beat anywhere else. I think that, last week was a bit of a reality check for Hawthorn, and we might see them lose a few more games going into the last few rounds. I think that they're probably going to just middle out a little bit, and I don't think they're a realistic finals chance. Fremantle, they'll want to keep going, and I'll tip them in this one by 25 points. Sydney versus North Melbourne, ladder position says that this should be a pretty one-sided affair. However, I think that North Melbourne have got Sydney at a really good time here. They've lost their last 2 matchups. Sydney have lost their last 2 games, while North Melbourne have been in pretty good form the last 5 rounds, I want to say. They beat West Coast, then only narrowly lost to Collingwood and Melbourne, and put up a reasonable fight against the Dogs before beating the Suns. So they've got a lot more confidence than they did 6 or 7 weeks ago. And the last few years, Sydney and North have played in a number of really close matchups. Last year, the only reason why Sydney won was because the North Melbourne went over the interchange count. Sydney got a free kick and a 50 and a goal. So that won them the game. And then I remember back in 2022, these two teams played. It was like an 11-point margin. 2021 was only like a 14-point margin. 2020, I believe, was only an 11-point margin as well. So these two teams, they play in close matches, and I definitely could see this being another close match. I'll tip the Swans, but I think it should be. It's definitely an opportunity for North Melbourne to claim a big scalp. I don't want it to happen, but it's definitely a possibility. I'll tip my team though, considering that it is first v 17th. But I'm not going into this game with a huge amount of confidence. I think that there definitely could be an upset brewing here. Bulldogs versus Carlton. The Bulldogs at their best again. You can never tip them. I think they've got to be the hardest team to tip in the competition. I don't think they've earned my tip this week. Yeah, I think Carlton bounced back. They still showed some good signs in that losses, like they got away to a really big lead early, and they did make a late fight back. So I don't think that was a bad loss for Carlton. I think there's some learnings for them out of that, and they still have confidence that they could at least make a good game if they were a few goals down in the last quarter. So I think that even though it's a Dogs home game, I'd back Carlton in this one comfortably. I'll go Carlton by 30 points. Melbourne versus Essendon, another tricky one to tip this. Melbourne back in some from form, 9-goal win against the Eagles. You know, the Eagles are probably the most out of form team in the competition right now. We've been talking a lot about in-form teams so far. Well, the Eagles are very much not in form, so I don't think a win over them means a whole lot. They played all right against Brisbane the previous week. They really should have won that game. They did everything in their power to lose that game, even though Brisbane kicked insanely inaccurately. They just kept them in it, and eventually they lost. So I don't really have any confidence in Melbourne winning this one. Essendon claimed a big scalp last week. There was some questions about them not really standing up against top 8 teams and them being flat track bullies. I think they put some of those criticisms to bed last week, although Collingwood are currently sitting outside the top 8, I believe. So, you know, maybe they haven't really proven themselves yet, but I think they should win this one against Melbourne. I'll go Dons by 21. Adelaide versus St Kilda, 14th versus 15th. Should be an interesting matchup. It's a home game for the Crows. They won't have Isaac Rankin in this one. And I think that could be a big out for Adelaide because Marcus Windhager has been doing a pretty good role tagging players most weeks. So I think that he might go, I think he'll definitely go to Jordan Dawson now that Rankin's out. And that leaves their midfield a little bit lackluster. The Saints will have a lot of confidence after just beating the Swans. So even though this is a Crows home game, and all logic would point towards a Crows win here, considering they have been playing a bit better as of late. They did win their last home game against the Giants. I'm going to tip the Saints in an upset. I remember a few years ago, the Saints got the job done against the Crows at home, and it was a reasonable upset at the time. And I think they'll have enough confidence, and they'll win this one in a close one by 4 points. Gold Coast versus Port Adelaide. This one's up on the Gold Coast. The Suns haven't lost a single game at home this season, apart from one neutral matchup in Gather Round where they were listed as the home team, but that doesn't really count. So in terms of actual home games, they have not lost a single one. I think this is the first. Port Adelaide, comprehensive victory over the Dogs last week, And ever since their first ever matchup, all the way back in 2011, that was the Suns' first ever win. Port Adelaide have not lost to the Suns ever since, and I don't see them losing this one. I think they'll be the first team to beat them away, to beat the Suns at their home deck, because it's always when the Suns need to win the most that they falter, and this is a game that they absolutely have to win. So by that logic, I'm just going to tip against the Suns here, since they pretty consistently fail themselves, and I think that the Power should get the job done. I'll go by 25 points. Richmond versus GWS. GWS back in some form. Richmond bottom of the ladder now. Pretty easy to tip this one. I think we'll go Giants by 41 points. I don't think I really need to explain myself anymore. Eagles versus Brisbane. Could be a bit of an interesting match, this one, because Adam Simpson has just been sacked. So I wasn't really following the Adam Simpson news too much, so it was a little bit of a surprise to me. But the more I think about it, it probably was the time and did make sense for the Eagles and Simpson to part ways. But it's a farewell game. Teams. I don't actually know the statistics for teams getting up in their coaches' farewell games. I feel like it probably does happen a fair amount. I can't really see the Eagles beating the Lions. The Lions. I'll go. It'll be a spirited performance. 31 points. The teams haven't actually played. The Eagles and Brisbane haven't played at Optus Stadium at all so far, even though it's been around for like 6-7 years now, which is a bit crazy. But yeah, so there's nothing really to go based on matchups. But yeah, I think that the Lions should get the job done here, and that is the end of round 18. So the ladder at the end of the round, still got Sydney and Carlton in first and second position. Fremantle still in third as well. Essendon in fourth. Geelong just outside in fifth position. Port Adelaide, Brisbane and GWS round out the top 8. Collingwood, Melbourne still just outside. Bulldogs in 11th. Gold Coast down in 12th. Hawthorn in 13th. And then the bottom 5 is pretty much the same as it's been for quite a while now. So that'll bring an end to this week's tipping video. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Comment down your predictions for the upcoming round in the comment section below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.